Alexa Vogel.
Alexa, and yes, normally it's one person, but we felt like the combination of technology and healthcare expertise made a lot of sense for this venue and this audience. So what we're going to talk a little bit today, which is a wonderful build on the last presentation, is around the role of trust as you think about how you move your business forward. So just backing up really quickly, Edelman is the largest communications firm in the world. We both sit in the Toronto office, and we work with organizations and brands of all kinds. We talk about the way that the work that we do around helping brands evolve, promote, and protect their reputations with the stakeholders that matter to them. And to us, not dissimilar to Pretty, the core foundation of that from our perspective is around trust. How you build trust, how you maintain trust. As was said earlier, it's very difficult to gain and it's very easy to lose. And so what you see here is the Edelman Trust Barometer, which is the largest study of trust of its kind in the world. We survey 33,000 citizens in different countries around the world. In Canada, it's 1,500, and we want to get grounded in the idea of trust around the four major institutions of society. So business, media, government, and the nonprofit sector. And we ask questions around trust in those various sectors and then break it down across three different audiences. So we have the Gen Pop, which as suggests is everyone. And then we also then do a cut of the informed public, which are citizens who over-index in the top quartile of income, college and university educated, consume news more than the average citizen. And then we also the difference between that is what we refer to as mass population. So we're here today to talk about health tech specifically, but I am just going to quickly go through a super high-level view in about 1 minute. As you can see here, global distrust is certainly a trend that has occurred over any number of years, but has been particularly pronounced over the last few. What you're seeing here is in the top blue, those are countries where net across all institutions, they trust their governments, their countries' institutions, I should say. And then in the middle is a very small cohort of those who fit into that neutral category, and the very large green lines indicate countries who have a net distrust across institutions. And you'll see that last year Canada just snuck into that, and this year we've sort of moved out with a +7 gain, which is actually one of the largest that we've seen around the world in the last year. I'll go to the next slide. And what we see in this rebound of trust, which is really interesting, is it's fairly consistent across the different institutions of society. But what I think is really important to note is the significant gap that, while it's closed somewhat, still exists between what informed publics and what the rest of the population feel about how the institution is working for them. And so to us, this is a tension point that I think is really important for us to navigate and think about as we go to market. No matter who your audience is for your product, at the end of the day, you do need to think about the societal impact that you're having, particularly in the healthcare space. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alexa, who's going to dig into health and technology specifically.
Perfect. So we're really excited to talk about this data that really applies to you as health tech companies. One thing I want to call out, if you see a little Canadian flag, that's Canadian specific data. If you see American, it's US. If there's no flag, that's at a global level. So next slide. So this is looking at trust across various industries here in Canada. And good news, within the top 4 most trusted industries are health and technology. You'll see that there was a 5-point increase in both industries actually. And we do want to call out within healthcare, we know that no two Canadians have the same experience. They might think about insurance or hospital or pharmaceuticals. So we even break it down by subsectors. We'd be happy to share that data. We have mass amounts of data we can share. Just try to distill it down to 7 minutes. But we did see a similar increase in trust across the board of healthcare. Next slide. We do want to call out that while technology is trusted, there are still concerns. Only 55% of people think that technology companies, this is across all technology sectors, are protecting their data. And less than half think that their own welfare is being put ahead of profits. So this is something to think about when communicating with these various audiences and asking them to build trust with you. If we go to the next slide. Now, this is when we ask, how do you think trust is going to help you and benefit your life? And the great news is health technology comes out on top above AI, blockchain, the Internet of Things. Now, we do know that there's some intersection. You could have a health tech company that's working in AI or using blockchain. The key learning from this slide is that people don't necessarily care about the technology. They care about how it impacts them and their lives. So maybe with communicating directly to the public, they don't necessarily want to hear what's happening behind the scenes. They want to know how it impacts them. And if we go to the next slide, we asked Canadians in 2019, what do you think health technology is going to do for your life? 40% think that it will help with better patient outcomes, and that will give their medical professional more information as well as themselves. But we're split in terms of will this make healthcare less expensive or more expensive at 17 and 19%. Next slide. Now this is where I think you'll find it really interesting, going back to providing data. We asked Canadians in 2019, what are the top 3 attributes of a company that would make you hand over your data? And they want to know that it's in the best system available, that it's looked at an aggregate level, not personal, and that there's the privacy of the data is guaranteed by government, which is different than our neighbors south of the border. We know any company that's looking for high growth is looking to the US market. They don't necessarily want government oversight, which is not surprising given the current events happening. But the second most common answer was none of the above. We don't want to give over our health data. So this actually shows that those of you sitting here in the audience have an advantage. That's because you can work here in Canada to pilot where there's trust before going to the US market. And another interesting fact is when we asked about companies' headquarters, globally the #1 most trusted country for a headquarters is here in Canada. So that's great if you're looking at global expansion. And I've been told minute, next slide. And I'll just really quickly sum this up. We know that it's important to build trust, but what are the right channels to communicate with your audiences? We are really excited to let you know that you have the power to tell your own story. If you look, the most trusted news source right now is traditional media. So that's surprisingly newspapers, TV, radio. There's fear about fake news. So you'll see online media is only 49% trust, while own channels are 45%. Only a 4% difference between your own channels. So own channels are your website, your blog. That's where they want to hear your story. So we're really excited to just let you know that Canadians have excitement and optimism and want to hear from you directly.
Thank you. I think we're at time, and I think we've effectively captured our key takeaways, but we'll leave this slide up and see if there's any questions that folks would like to chat about.
Thanks for the presentation. 2 quick things. One, both presentations, one that prior to you and yours mentioned trust. I'm hoping that neither thinks of trust as a commodity, because it isn't. My question is this: in terms of how you define trust, that we need to know what the component elements of that. For me, when I think of trust, I think of truth, transparency, and consistent life-giving behavior. So
yes,
love to hear yours.
Yeah, so I think, there is a broader, there are many ways in which you can break down. For the purposes of this study, we sort of needed to leave it at a relatively elemental sort of question, which is, what is your belief that this institution is going to do the right thing, without defining what that is, but from your perspective?
So it goes almost back to the earlier presentation of, is it aligned with your own values? Do you trust them to do what's right?
One more question?
Nope.
How do you define the informed public versus the general public?
So the informed public, we use the variables of income. So in the top quarter of income, as well as education, so college, university educated, and then news consumption. So over-indexing relative to the average on news consumption. Those are the primary variables we looked at.
And it's also 25 to 64, what we assume working age, while then Gen Pop is anyone 18 plus.